every so often a movie comes along that you have to talk about. The good, the bad, the crazy. It's just contractually obligated. Welcome, one and all, to my newest entry here into what I've been calling Shag Carpet Cinema, looking at the TV movies of the 1970s and 1980s. The movie I had to sit down and talk about late and with a little bit of a virus, so I'm hoping my voice sounds okay. The Jayne Mansfield Story from 1980. I stumbled on this fascinating little gem on YouTube last week. Now, if you've been living under a TV movie rock, which I knew about this film, but I never found it. So this follows the life story, I'm putting that in quotes, of the 1950s, 1960s blonde bombshell Jayne Mansfield, played by Loni Anderson, and her husband Mickey Hargitay, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1980. And that had the most fascinatingly delightful cult appeal. I say this has the life story in quotes because I cannot call myself a Mansfield expert by any stretch. I've seen a couple of her movies, but I've done precious little research, so this will not speak to any historical validity on any of the plot points, so I'm just going to put that out right there. I came at this film as a child of the 90s, so of course knew Loni Anderson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, both going back years upon years upon years. And Loni Anderson's casting in particular was a fascinatingly complex beast to tackle here. Because for a lot of this film, her interpretation of Mansfield annoyed the heck out of me. She was not afraid to play up the ditzy. There's a lot of giggling. There's a lot of just what a sex symbol entitled The Blonde Bombshell could be. After saying all that, though, especially towards the second act of this film, moments started to peek through where Anderson's character at her best starts to emerge. Now, my main experience with Loni Anderson has been WKRP in Cincinnati. I watched that at a far too young an age before I could really understand it, and actually only rewatched it again fairly recently, probably around the pandemic. I was able to kind of put together the episodes on YouTube and things and find it. But her portrayal of Jennifer, especially after that second rewatch, is one of my favorite TV characters. The intelligence and the depth that both Anderson and the show's writers are able to inject, and how they're able to kind of turn a character which in any other show could be so stereotypical on its head a little bit and let her look back at the camera, let her have a little bit of a wink, a knowledge that, an acceptance that people see her, but then she sees them right back. And this is where Anderson shines as Mansfield. And it are these little moments, and quite frankly, they're pretty quiet, and I could even be injecting in some of them. But in these moments where the woman behind the, quote, Jayne Mansfield persona shines through, is where this film is at its best. There's a sadness, there's an acknowledgement, there's a reticence. And once I kind of found that diving into this film, I found it really a fascinating take. But it was a bit hard to get there because there's a lot of giggling, a lot of titillation. I mean, ultimately, this is a film that's told through Mickey Hargitay's perspective. So this is Jayne Mansfield's story through Mickey's narration. So, and to pivot to Mickey real quick, we all know Arnold Schwarzenegger. We've been there, we've watched the movies. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger at the absolute beginning of his career. So looking at his IMDb filmography, so this was 1980. He had done a few things prior to this. The Villain was the year before. You know, I've seen him in things like The Long Goodbye. He'd been kind of around Hollywood throughout the 1970s. He got The Villain in 1979. He did this in 1980. And he got Conan the Barbarian in 1982, which is kind of that stepping stone. And this is a role for him that makes sense. You know, a European bodybuilder, Mr. Universe. But boy, oh boy, the acting lessons had not quite clicked in yet. There are some line deliveries here where they must be seen to be believed. But one thing I really did like that Arnold is able to bring across is there's a sense of just how genuine this man is, and how simple is the wrong word, but how much of an outsider he is to this Hollywood establishment that the film is working so hard to craft, really to understand everything that Mansfield is going through. And this rough scene and this very sex obsessed culture of being the blonde bombshell when you've got a very young, wide-eyed Arnold Schwarzenegger just wanting this woman to be his wife. And unfortunately, due to the fact that Mickey is the film's narrator, there's not a lot of places for Arnold to hide here. It puts the limitations on his acting at this point in his career very much front and center. So this, especially in those moments, this is very much where it ends up feeling like a, quote unquote TV movie, where you could get into, drinking games and things like that, and where it turns into, is this intentionally hilarious or unintentionally hilarious? But from a film history perspective, I think it's really entertaining from some level, also just to see where such a cultural figure that Schwarzenegger was and still is, where he came up. Because Conan gets talked about a lot, and I've seen some of his early roles in the 70s, but this is kind of right at that time where he was starting to explode. So it's, in terms of a star persona study, it's really an interesting thing to see. This scans through Mansfield's life, mainly focusing on her time with Mickey, but there's a little before, and it does go through her death, which is handled in some form. It's always interesting to see in these bio stories how they choose to handle it. And it is tackled. It could have been handled a lot better. It could have been handled a lot worse. I leave that open to the interpretation. But this was a bit of a challenge in the long run. This felt like a bit of a long sit. It actually did take me a couple goes to get through it. But I really liked, thinking back on it, just the weirdness of this casting. Schwarzenegger and Loni Anderson together, and just the respective layers that these two bring with their careers. It's a really interesting cultural artifact to take a look at. I honestly would not go far as to recommend this, especially for Mansfield fans, mainly because I do not know. And I know how scripts like this can really butcher a life story. So please, please, please do not go into this with an eye for the history. But those looking for weird 1970s and 1980s cultural artifacts, cultural TV movies, things like that, take a look at this one if you have time. This is kind of a weird one, kind of a kooky one. It's not amazing, but there's some fun layers here that I definitely had my mind rocked with. But I will go ahead and bring this one to a close. It's already too long as it is. Thank you for joining me here at Piercing Pop Culture. I have a couple of episodes planned this week for the usual Tuesday, Thursday drops, and I am looking to start eventually beginning to drop here on the weekends as well for some of this little more bite-sized content. Thank you so much for joining me here at Piercing Pop Culture. Have a good one all.